I am loving this new indie genre of fine, I'll do it myself. Where certain games just go so long without any kind of new entry that indie devs make their own take on it, sometimes even surpassing their inspiration. Bug Fables is like that. It's basically the Thousand Year Door sequel that Nintendo refused to make for some reason. Or how Spark the Electric Jester 3 is just Sonic Adventure 2 if the controls were way tighter. And if you haven't heard of either of these games, Stardew Valley is just a better Harvest Moon. The latest in this genre I just made up is Bomb Rush Cyberfunk, or Jet Set Radio, but real. Jet Set Radio is definitely a series that deserved more games. The first game felt more like an experiment than a full game, and while Future was an insane improvement, it still had some big problems holding it back. Honestly, another game like this, and we're gonna have something really special. But alas, the game sold like ass, so they never made another one. I think there was a third game pitched for the Wii, but that obviously never panned out. The Wii is a retro console now. I hate this fact too. And then comes Team Reptile, the creators of Lethal League. They had already worked with Hideki Naganuma before, and their previous games did well enough to warrant giving themselves a budget, so you know what, why not make our own Jet Set Radio? It's not like Sega's gonna do it. And Bomb Rush Cyberfunk looked good. There was actually a decent amount of hype around it for an indie game. I was looking forward to it. Even if it didn't hit all the same notes, I figured it would at least be good enough to satisfy the hyper-specific hole in people's hearts. And after playing it, pretty much, yeah. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk actually has a surprisingly wild story. It started off as this guy named Foe stuck in a police station, so some dude named Trice helps you bust out, but not before this DJ Cyber dude decapitates Foe with a record blade. Like, god damn, that is the sickest way to go. I wouldn't even be mad, like, yeah, you killed me, I'm dead, but at least I went out in style. So the main character of this game is not Foe, but instead Foe's body with a robot head attached to it. We'll call him Red. He doesn't remember anything from his previous life, but wants to. That's gotta be the weirdest excuse for amnesia I've ever seen in a game. Like, no magic, no PTSD, no getting hit on the head with a fire extinguisher. You literally die. But here's the thing, Foe just happened to be one of the best writers who ever lived. Basically, dudes going around painting the streets with graffiti. The streets still have rules, though. You can't just go around killing people. The only guy that can give any kind of answers is the one who killed Foe in the first place. The Bomb Rush crew meets up with DJ Cyber pretty quickly, and he puts Red into this weird-ass dream sequence that gives him a vague idea of what happened. Something about what Red saw in his dream doesn't add up, but the only way to find out more is to beat more crews and eventually go all city, basically just being the best in town. That's pretty much how this story goes from this point. You beat up the main crew for the area, go through this dream platforming sequence, move on to the next. It's pretty straightforward, but it's a lot more than I was expecting. I'm not really going into spoiler territory on this because, one, the game's still pretty new, and two, there isn't really much to analyze beyond, that was crazy, bro. The story's satisfying, that has some nice twists that are well foreshadowed, and the characters are pretty likable. Like, there's this one dude named Solace who's claustrophobic, but he's also a masochist, so he's just always hanging around tight spaces. We love and respect Solace in this house. You know, the game can also be pretty funny when it wants to be. Like, Trice just does not like this dude because of how weird he is, and Solace asks to join the crew. Without hesitation, he just says, no. I kinda wish Bomb Rush had voice acting, though. I get that this is an indie game, but it definitely felt a little awkward having everyone just standing around with you reading text boxes. But again, the story's way better than I expected, so I won't complain about the lack of voice acting too much. The gameplay is the main focus anyway. So Bomb Rush Cyberfunk is basically just a Jet Set Radio clone, but that's not derogatory. A game like this hasn't been made in 20 years. Calling it a clone is hardly a bad thing. Now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think anyone's really tried to make a spiritual successor of Jet Set Radio because of how specific its vibe is. This is a game where you go around on roller skates, spraying graffiti, and listening to awesome music in genres that are hard to even identify. At least for someone like me with very little music knowledge. I don't know who Weezer is, and at this point I'm too afraid to ask. The closest anyone's ever come to making a new Jet Set Radio was Hover, but even then, it's not really the same game. Jet Set Radio just has this insanely specific aesthetic and feel that's hard to replicate without tons of talent. And even then, these games never sold that great, so whether people actually wanted a game like this was up in the air. Bomb Rush Cyberfunk was on the Switch eShop top sellers for a bit, so there's a real chance this game is outsold Future, or at least close to it, which is simultaneously really great to hear and really depressing to think about. But making their own take on Jet Set Radio is one thing. If you're gonna do this, you need to make meaningful changes in the gameplay, which it does. Bomb Rush does a lot of good in this department, actually, like way more than I was expecting. The controls and game feel is so much better than it ever was in Future. Even if Future was a big improvement over the original, the controls were still pretty clunky. It was hard to do any kind of precise movement, and if you needed to reverse your direction on a rail, you couldn't do much about it. So Team Reptile was like, yo, what if you had a jetpack on your back that gave you an air boost? and it's a pretty great way to address that. You not only get more airtime when you use it right, but it also gives you a lot more control over yourself, including reversing your direction on rails. There's this one place in the game called Pyramid Island, and there's all these grind rails on the highest layer of the map. If this game had controls that are 1-to-1 what JSRF had, this place would have been a complete nightmare. You had so little precision in your movement, and the going between so many rails and small platforms would have been awful. Like, there was one part of the game where you had to chase down some guys down a roller coaster, and despite how cool it was really hard to actually catch up with them because they moved at mostly the same speed as you. The only way I could consistently damage these guys was to just wait at the entrance to jump them. But in Bomb Rush, you feel so in control of your movement, but this place was actually super fun to move around in. Worst case scenario, you fall off and there's a shortcut back to the top and you just go back to what you're doing before. There's this enclosed tunnel that leads to the very top of the place, which took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out, but that's about it. There's even this one part where you're jumping between windmills and you actually have to time your jumps and boosts to make sure you land on the next one. It felt pretty awesome. The level design in general is much less confusing. The game's open world with an asterisk. Like, all the areas lead into each other, but they're still separated by loading zones. Getting to each place is pretty straightforward, though. You never need to go through the map gymnastics to get from one place to another. Most areas connect to either Millennium Hill or the Hideout, so it's not hard to figure out where anything is. And besides, there's a taxi you can call to fast travel anyway. So as long as you've been to an area before, you can just find the taxi stop and you can get back pretty quick. The taxi system is awfully basic, though. You have to save this dude to unlock it, which is fine, but then you have to find the taxi spots to use it, which is also fine. But it's not marked on the map as far as I can tell, so I just end up forgetting where these things are. It's a weird thing to leave out from the map. Character swapping pads aren't on the map either. Again, it's annoying. Why leave that out? Luckily, the character swap pads and taxi stops are on the map now after a patch, but it's really odd that it wasn't there at launch. Probably the only confusing area was the mall. I can never remember how to get back to the deeper part of it, so I just took a taxi over there instead. Plus, there's a lot of platforms that require you to do a lot of specific movement. It's just a weird area. The future was definitely worse in this department. That game loved making you do weird movement tricks for no real reason. Like all those half pipes in the skyscraper district. Bomb Rush never does anything like that, thank God. Bomb Rush's level design is definitely a bit blander because of it, but considering this is a place you're supposed to run around and explore, I'm okay with that. If you want a bit more of a challenge, there are these foam finger guys scattered around levels. If you hit all of them while maintaining a trick combo, they open up a storage room and you can get a track to play in the music player or a new graffiti design. This usually means touching all of them without hitting the ground. These are hard, too. It is a painful reminder of how bad I am in these games. Like, there's this one group in the mall, I think, where you have to hit like 18 of them, and it's just like, no way, dude, I'm not even attempting this. That's an outlier, though. Most are pretty fun to try and complete, but I'm awful at figuring them out. The main thing you do in this game is spray graffiti, though. Pretty much you go around and spray up graffiti spots until you have enough rep to challenge a rival crew in the area. The first Jet Set Radio had you play this QuickTime event where you rotated the analog stick, but it was clunky and slowed the game down too much, so Future just dished it in favor of having you spray multiple squares to fill out bigger murals. Bomb Rush actually brings back the QuickTime event, but now you have to draw shapes by tilting the analog stick. On paper, this sounds like a downgrade, but I actually really liked it. This is a great compromise. In Future, it didn't really feel like you were actually spray painting anything. It felt more like you were just forcing these paintings into existence. It sped up the gameplay significantly, but it felt like an overcorrection in hindsight. Here in Bomb Rush, it actually feels like specific input is required, which makes it feel like you have to do something. Even if time is completely paused, you're always guaranteed to be able to finish the spray. Every graffiti design even uses a different shape, so instead of swapping out the designs in a menu, you can potentially handpick what you want to go in each spot. It's a really small detail that gives you the ability to personalize your own playthrough a bit. You don't need to search for spray cans either, so if you see one and you can get to it, just spray it up. Who's stopping you? The cops? Yes, actually. The cops are really annoying in this game. You have this GTA-like WANA system to worry about. After you get enough rep in an area, the cops start to come after your ass once you start spraying enough places. The issue is that they are no threat whatsoever. You can literally just ignore them. Except for the parts where they're so annoying that you can't get anything done, but even then, your health regenerates fast enough that you're unlikely to actually die to these guys. Seriously, these cops are a nuisance more than anything else. You can't even swap characters when they're after you. These assholes are just there to be annoying, especially those turrets that shoot handcuffs at you. You can fight them by doing tricks, which is a really neat idea. The same tricks you do to charge up your boost meter are also used as attacks. But all this really does is make them angry and raise the heat level, so the real solution to these assholes is to find a toilet so that you can change your outfit and all your heat is just just magically gone. That is pretty funny, though. All these guys are so stupid they can just change your outfit and they forget who you are. It's not even a model swap either, your colors just change. One problem, though, why are porta potties not on the map? This seems like a very important thing to put on the map. Like, seriously, there were times where I was running around for a while looking for one of these things and I just gave up. Again, fixing a patch, but also, again, I question how it wasn't there at launch. The only other major activity I haven't talked about yet are the crew battles. Basically, you have to get more trick points than the opposing team before the time limit ends. This isn't as easy as it sounds. They do not mess around. These stupid things were taking me multiple tries. Even when I did win, I just barely won. Like, am I doing something wrong, or am I just bad at this game? As it turns out, I was doing something wrong. Midway through the second one of these, I noticed the boost tricks give way more points than anything else, and the easiest way to increase the multiplier was to tilt the stick in the direction of a rail turn to give yourself a little boost. So when you combine these two tricks, you will never lose ever again. And honestly, this made these a little too easy. After figuring this out, I never felt like I was out-styling my opponent. It felt like I was exploiting game mechanics. Because I was. I feel like this could be a really cool challenge when you know the mechanics and everything, but I was never really into tricks and stuff, so I'm good with just being able to skip this. The dream sequences that usually come after are way more fun. Imagine if you were playing a Mario Galaxy level, but it was entirely built around parkour mechanics. That's basically what these are, and they're really fun. It gets really trippy, too. Like this part where I have to continually jump on cars and stuff. I'd be down to have some kind of DLC or something that's just more of these levels. There's something about platforming to this weird, esoteric imagery that really hits the spot for me. The game could have used more stuff like this. Because I have already described everything you do in this game, aside from a few boss fights. The one time where I had to track down that sniper dude was pretty cool. The one DJ Cyber fight where he throws record blades at you is kind of annoying because they can be hard to dodge. Yeah, that's pretty much the only other unique things that happen. Aside from some stuff near the end of the game, but again, I'm not getting into that. That's probably my only big issue with Bomb Rush. It really could have used some more variety. Exploring and graffitiing is pretty great, but when it's all you do, it can drag on a bit. But I suppose that's how Bomb Rush sets itself apart from Jet Set. Future was balls to the wall insane with his gameplay scenarios. You were stopping a robot invasion, you were chasing dudes down a roller coaster track, you were kidnapped and forced to play this ball racing minigame. It was crazy, man. Bomb Rush is pretty tame by comparison. At most, you fight a giant killer robot or two. This game's a lot more grounded, and probably tells a better story because of it. When you're going through so many weird scenarios, the plot tends to be completely abandoned. So you essentially have a game with much better controls and a much better story that's generally better designed, but just doesn't end up being as memorable. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It mainly depends on your preference, but I really ended up missing all the wacky hijinks you got yourself into. It made it a lot more charming. Bomb Rush really falls flat in this department. But where it doesn't fall flat is the music, because man, did they nail it. There was a lot of different stuff here, mainly electronic to go with the whole cyberfunk thing, but then you got whatever genre Friday Night Funkin' is. And British rapping. Most of the music is really good, but then there's definitely some that just sound like generic electronic noise. I really couldn't remember those ones. I definitely wish there were more original tracks, because as far as I could tell, the game's soundtrack is mostly licensed tracks from random indie artists I've never heard of. One of which is Too Mellow, who made a Jet Set Radio-inspired album called Memories of Tokyo-to. That's not just on the nose, it's practically living on it. And also, this is one of the best songs in the game. But the main reason I wish I didn't use so many licensed tracks is because that's a big reason why Jet Set Radio Future's never been re-released. Music licensing is so messy, they need some kind of contingency plan in place so that it can still be re-released without much issue. Hopefully it won't matter, but you really never know what'll happen with this kind of thing. I don't want history to be repeated, especially not with an indie game like this. Alright, look, I've run out of things to say about this game. Is Bomb Rush Cyberfunk good? Is it worth $40? Should I play it? Should I listen to the soundtrack on repeat? Yes, to all of those questions. But at least for me, Bomb Rush Cyberfunk was a pretty solid game that I really enjoyed, that also happens to be one that I didn't really care about that much. I don't know, just sort of happens sometimes. Because of that, it was pretty hard for me to even figure out what to say about this game. Luckily, I did figure it out, like a month after I finished playing it, and then procrastinated on it, and didn't finish the script until a month after that. Seriously, I procrastinated on this for so long that hell froze over and Sega announced a new Jet Set Radio. So point is, the video came good. Like, comment, and subscribe. It's been fun. Take care, everyone.